Erica Louder. No fruit flies. You got me right at the beginning. Dude, I'm never bringing a banana into the studio again. I'm telling you, it's been a week. I've been like trying to chase down these dumb fruit flies because it's like I had the banana and I put it in the refrigerator and I forgot. And then it like rotted in the refrigerator and I opened it. I'm like, oh, okay, no big deal. It was like, you know, when you put bananas in fridges and they turn brown really fast, it wasn't even that long. It was like a couple days, but the fruit flies are like, yes. And I haven't been able to get rid of them. How are you? Thank you for coming.
Yeah.
Listen, you and I met over the last couple of days at the, obviously Dairy West convention, and I had the great pleasure of speaking with Michael Dykes yesterday as well as Steve Seppi. And, obviously, so we have the Western kind of association, then national, Michael Dykes is dealing nationally and some internationally, and you are with US DEC, which is awesome because you're dealing with United States dairy exporting. So you're dealing with the world dairy market, which means a lot of different things, obviously. I was chatting with my wife about it. She's like, yeah, like milk and stuff. I'm like, no, man, like we're talking like the number of products that get exported. I was like, your protein. She's like, well, I don't buy any like, European milk. I'm like, where do you get your protein powder? She's like, oh, I don't know. I'm like, exactly. Like, we don't even know where we're getting it. So that's what you do. This is the world you live in. Talk to me about the state of international trade with US-based dairy.
Okay, so
dairy products across the board, protein, like whey, cheeses, liquid, the whole bit.
So I'll turn back the clock just a tiny bit, but other industries like soybean and wheat came to the export space a lot sooner than dairy did. And about 1995, dairy was like, hey, if dairymen are known for one thing, it's known for production, and they're going to produce a lot of milk. So there had to be another avenue for milk to go. And that's when, or I should say dairy products to go. And that's when really a group of dairymen said, we need to start exporting in a serious way.
This wasn't until the mid 90s?
Yeah, it was the mid 90s.
Dude, that's wild.
Yeah. So we started, really before that, it was always like opportunistically. If there was a place, there was extra powder on the, powder in the States domestically, just a place for it to go was the international. Sure. In 95, dairy checkoff, which Steve probably talked about dairy checkoff yesterday. So
that was when I pretended I understood what dairy checkoff is.
So we're funded.
Oh yeah, checkoff, like funded, Star Wars or Star Trek.
It essentially means we're funded by dairy farmers.
Yeah, sure.
And
there's a certain portion of each hundredweight that gets attributed to a mechanism that promotes and distribute or engages in marketing dairy.
Yeah. So the same thing like Dairy West or what Steve does with his organization that they do domestically, we do internationally. Great. So same kind of work, looking to grow demand for dairy across borders, and specifically U.S. dairy. Right now, the metric we use is 1 in 6 tankers leaving a dairy farm is headed for international markets. So it's
16%.
Yeah,
that's a lot.
It's more like 17 to 18. It kind of varies. Awesome. So 16% to 18% is headed for international markets. Right now, most of our major markets are Mexico, Canada, China, a lot in Southeast Asia, building markets in Middle East. Anyway, that's kind of our general markets we're looking at. The state of it right now is there is a lot of domestic product that we're looking for a home for, and a good place for it to go is internationally. There's a lot of conversation about tariffs. That's part of it. Generally speaking, there's optimistic.
You're going so fast.
I know you got to ask me. You asked me.
Hang on. So look, I saw part of the conversation with Kendra, correct? Or excuse me, who was the keynote yesterday?
Oh, Krista.
Excuse me.
Yeah,
not Kendra. My apologies. Yeah. Krista. It's
Harden.
There we go. Harden. I saw part of her keynote, right? Because I was running late from a nuclear episode, and what I had no idea about is that the EU and the US, obviously we trade, we import, export dairy products to each other, but the trade imbalance there is like so phenomenal. It's literally $3 billion of imports from the EU into the United States, and we get $150 million of exports to the EU, which if anybody's quick at math, that's literally 5% versus 95%. And this is largely because of protectionist policies in the EU that create this massive trade imbalance that is at least in part being addressed or attempted to be addressed by the current administration. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I mean, that's accurate. I think that one thing, I'm happy to talk about EU for sure.
Let's talk some trash.
Yeah, we can talk some trash about EU. The thing is that the EU, because they are so protectionist, they're so hard to work with. It's not a major market for us because it's so hard to get into. Even when all this discussion with EU that's been happening and the rhetoric around it, there's very, very little carve out for the dairy industry. The beef got some concessions. I think wheat got some concessions. There's very, very little room for dairy.
Well, okay, let me ask you this. Why do we then import $3 billion? Like if somebody's like, no, we're gonna put so that I presume they have something in the neighborhood of like very rigid tariffs that make our product, not very palatable to their markets, at least to some degree economically, because it's not quality. Like we have the best quality milk in the world, right? High efficiencies, all these things. So it's not the quality or the quantity. They're like, we're just gonna make it too expensive.
So have you ever heard of Kerrygold butter?
Yeah, in Costco.
So Kerrygold butter isn't even really sold. Kerrygold butter, as we understand it, really isn't sold in Ireland. It's a marketing gimmick. It's a marketing. I mean, and I want to go as far as to say it's a gimmick. It's a good product, but we seem to love it in the United States. The other thing is
it's really heavy.
Yeah, it's 83%. So it's higher fat content, right? And we don't produce a high fat content in our butter here. So it's a little bit different.
We just don't.
It's just not what we've historically done. And also that you open up a thing of Kerrygold butter and it's this bright yellow color. All those cows that are grazed on high keratin on pasture. It's just a different type of product. But we seem to like it. So that's part of it, Kerrygold butter. The other thing is specialty cheeses. In the US, we produce super good artisan old world style cheeses with our own spin on it. But when people, even like random Americans, are polled, they are going to say that European, Italian, French, German cheeses are better cheeses. When we're talking about those high-end, if you go to your Whole Foods or something like that, there's going to be a lot of little French flags by the specialty cheeses. So we're importing a ton of specialty cheeses from Europe.
I rock Humboldt Fog all day long. But that's made in like Marin, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, yes, but there, like, even when we talk about Idaho or our region, like there's some great cheese producers here, like Ballard's Cheese is great, specialty cheeses, Beehive Cheese out of Salt Lake, really, really nice, like specialty cheeses that are produced. If we go back to Wisconsin, fantastic specialty cheeses.
Yeah. Tillamook, big fan.
Oh yeah, Tillamook, right?
And fantastic.
And Tillamook's kind of bridge that category between like a big like commodity cheese and a specialty cheese by having that in between. But yes, we have like great cheeses. But when you look at the rest of the world, they still very much associate like specialty cheeses with like Europe, with the French cheeses. Plus,
do we have specialty cheese producers in the Treasure Valley? Do we have somebody doing like a triple cream brie or something?
Oh,
let's go on a cheese tour.
We'll have to do a cheese tour.
I want to do a cheese tour.
I am sure there is, and I'm sure you have audience members that are like
screaming,
pop in the comments, be like, yeah, I do.
Dude, I'm all about it. Like, let's find the artisan cheese manufacturing or like small mom and pop shop, and like let's go take some crackers and like go try the cheese.
Well, and one thing that we've always part of the work that U.S. Dairy Export Council does is as we look like globally, making sure that markets understand that U.S. quality cheeses are on par or better than anything that's produced in Europe. And what Europe gets tied down, their cheese producers get tied down with certain restrictions. Well, in the United States, we can take old world style recipes and then make them our own, right?
Is that a nature of like unpasteurized versus like hyperpasteurized?
I mean, part of it is like, like some certain cheeses are raw. They come from raw milk, and there's like that piece of it. And I won't pretend to like be an expert on any of that.
Yeah, sure.
But like in order for a certain, like, let's say like Parmesan to be called Parmesan, it needs to be from a certain part of Italy, right? There's like all these geographic indicators that are restrictive. And what Europe also, I mean, we're going to get down in the Europe hole, but the other thing that Europe does is they'll go to other parts of the world and tell somebody like, let's say Mexico or South America and say, we want influence policy so that cheeses, common food name cheeses, can't be called those things unless they're coming from those regions of Europe. It's like the wine industry.
It's like champagne.
Absolutely. The wine industry has done this
sparkling
as
white
well.
wine. Yeah, it's sparkling white wine unless it's from Champagne, France.
Yeah. So the exact same thing is happening with cheeses. Parmesan can only come from that part of Italy, all that kind of stuff. And so part of the work we actually do, we have a whole consortium that we work with actually the wine industry on as well to help make sure those kind of policies don't happen globally. So U.S. cheese producers are kept out of the markets because, well, their hard Italian cheese is the common food name is Parmesan. We can't not be able to call that and market, or nobody's going to know what we're talking about.
Right.
And so there is like that's part of the work we're doing. But Europe is why we have this trade imbalance in dairy. We are importing Kerrygold butter. We are importing specialty cheeses. Europe isn't, like you mentioned it before about your wife and her protein powder. I imagine her protein powder is U.S. dairy.
Gotcha.
But it's those specialty cheeses. She goes to Whole Foods or whatever and, wants to try some different cheese. Those very well could be,
gotcha.
European cheeses.
Okay. So, and again, please excuse my ignorance. I don't really understand the balance of like international stuff, but why don't we just slap a tariff on the EU cheese supply and be like, look, bro, first off, you guys are hammering us over the pond, not letting our products infiltrate your markets, yet you take advantage of our huge consumer markets and then market yourself as having like better stuff, and everybody's going to market themselves as better stuff, right? You're never going to see a Yelp review from a restaurant owner being like, my Kung Pao is so-so. Like everybody's going to say it's the best, but like, why doesn't America and the Fed, this administration be like, hey man, you have a 300% tariff on our cheese or our dairy product when we try to ship it over to you. You know what? You get a 300% tariff on us. Why don't we do that?
Yeah, it would be awesome if it was that like easy, but in the sense that like dairy only had, I don't know quite, I was gonna say only dairy has so much power, right? Like because the European cheese or let's say the European Dairy Organization or like industry it's very important for the region. So they aren't going to
for their region.
It's very important for Europe. So, and their lobbying party, it's not is strong. So when they're trying to when we're at the negotiating table, dairy is not something they're going to give up.
Okay, so when Michael Dykes goes to the lobbyist, or you guys go to the Krista Harding goes to not the lobbyist, but to the administration, like, hey man, dairy's getting hammered. Go to the EU and tell them to stop messing around, or we're going to slap tariffs on them too. And then the U.S. administration or U.S. representatives go over to the EU. They're like, hey man, listen, we want these things and stop messing around with dairy. Like, we're done with this. They look at them, they're like, no way in hell.
Yes.
Because their own dairy person is like, first off, we support all of you guys, European political candidates, and we support all of these industries, and we are pumping in all of this money. If you mess with us, it's all over. So then that goes upstream to like the European people, and they're like, hey man, you can ask us for a lot of things. Like, you want to open up the tariffs on bicycles? That's fine. Like Schwinn, Trek, Specialized, whatever you want. Schwinn's not even American. Like Trek or Specialized. Oh my God, I'm such an idiot. Like, okay, great. You want to open it up to bicycles? That's fine. Dairy's not even on the table. Something is like you squint enough, and that's kind of how it looks.
And obviously that's like a simplified idea of it, and I'm not
the bike example.
And I'm not like one of our lobbyists. Like, I'm not going to pretend I am the expert on trade here. We have a group of trade policy experts. But yes,
but it is real.
And Europe is very, very difficult to deal with, even in the sense that like the other thing that like part of our organization also provides like market access resources for our members, like dairy processors. Sure. And we have one person, and Sandra Benson. She's in charge of
out Sandra.
I know she's in charge of helping helping export into Europe. And the amount of like regulations required is crazy. And she'll go talk to like European regulators, like, oh, it's not that hard. And she'll be like, pull up like, hey, this is where it's hard. And they're like, oh no, it's not as hard as you guys are making out. You guys don't know what you're talking about. And so it's like, it's not even a market, it's a market that we will help with, but that we're not focused on because they make it so difficult. And the other thing on like the lobbying side, dairy doesn't often come to the table by itself when we have those negotiations. It's agriculture as a whole. And so we're, the administration or whoever is having these talks,
it's like dairy's one of 50 products.
Yeah. And so if dairy is like, when I say, oh, beef had some concessions in Europe, but dairy didn't get very much, right? Like it's just part of that negotiation piece of it. And because Europe is, it's dairy is what they're known for, right? That's not where they're going to make their concession.
Gotcha.
So it's a place. And the one thing too is you'd mentioned earlier, like the UK left the European Union, and yet they still import a ton of their dairy products from Europe. Like the majority of their dairy products come from Europe. They're not even part of the European Union. So that's a market I think that we could take, right?
We could take them.
I could
take them.
And I mean,
let's get in the ships.
Like why UK leaves the European Union because of lots of different factors, and now they're still trading with them very, very heavily. But they're not having any of the advantages of being part of those discussions because they've left the European Union. Why not trade with the United States?
Well, you also have problems. The European has, being part of that has a lot. Like do you remember when Greece was like getting hammered and just like they're essentially going bankrupt? Excuse me. I have a friend who's Greek. And he's like, look, one of the problems is they've tied their fiscal wagon to this like horse, and they have to go wherever the horse pulls them. It's like if Greece actually had autonomy from a fiscal standpoint, they could allow for a certain degree of inflation, which nobody likes, but they would be they would be able to use that lever to alleviate some of the pain. But because they're tied to the EU, financial system, they can't do that. So they don't have autonomy. So they're in this horrendous position. And again, I recognize it's very simplified and there are a lot of different factors that go into it. But that was one thing where I'm like, oh, this is really complex. Like, it's not as simple as like, oh, why don't you just like jump on board? Like, we'll have a picnic.
Well, and then when really like, that's where we say like, what was it last month? We did a trade mission. The Idaho governor did a trade mission to the UK of like, let's look at opportunities, right? Like that's the Idaho side, but like globally or domestically United States, there might be opportunities because in the UK, because they're not tied financially to Europe in the same way that they were when they were part of the European Union. So opportunities in the UK.
I got you.
Europe, we get some specialty product in there as we can, but it's not
really your focus.
It's not our focus by any means.
So when you're talking about focusing and addressing markets, then you're predominantly, or at least like two of the really important ones would be Canada and China. Canada and China are like mad about the tariffs, but this is like a bucket of worms that like once, at least if we look at like the China relationship with tariffs and imports and exports, we have a horrendous situation with them where you're really looking at, problems with defense, problems with, fundamental pieces of materials that we all need for every piece of technology, like all kinds of problems, and dairy's getting thrown in there as well. So it's like China's coming to the table like, hey man, we're going to start like messing with every single lever we can. And it's all tied together. So it's like, how do you even parse out dairy in an agreement with China when you're like, we're still trying to get like critical minerals and they're controlling leases across the world and all of that stuff? Yeah.
So it is. So I will say, like, just to comment on Canada first, then we'll talk about China. Canada is also a market we look at a lot like Europe. We have a lot of product goes to Canada because they're our northern neighbors. They're close, but they're very protectionist against their own dairy industry as well. There's certain quotas. So actually Canada is a market we want to keep, but it's not a market that we work on in the same way that we work on other markets.
Okay, but help me understand. Like, I'm an idiot. Okay, so like when you're like Canada's very protectionist, why aren't we U.S. protectionist?
Because we produce too much dairy.
No, but like, but we're importing their stuff.
Yeah, we're not importing very much Canadian.
Okay.
Canada's not like producing enough for us to import.
Cut
Canadian.
off the EU. Cut them all off.
Yeah.
Like I don't, what I'm saying is like, I don't understand why these markets that we're concerned with trading get to be hyper protectionist with their commodities, or let's say their cheeses or their dairy products, whatever. And the US is just taking it on the chin. Now, again, I'm sure there are reasons. I just don't understand them. It's like, you have siblings, right?
Yeah.
It's like, you look at it's like, that's not fair. Like mom's picking a favorite. Like my brother, I don't get along with my brother. Like I remember when I was a kid, like I didn't complain a lot. Okay, that was one of my great downfalls as a child. Like I didn't complain enough. I didn't complain enough. And like my siblings got, cars when they were teenagers. They got, and I'm not saying great cars, but they got rides. Like they had the wheels, right? They got, cars. They got like support. Like I remember this one great example when I was like 10 and my brother and dad got into this big, he was a, little bit of a rough teenager, but they get into this big argument one night. And it's like this big blowout at my house. And the next thing we know, my dad's taking my brother on a trip to see my grandfather in Mexico. It's like, wait a minute. Like, I didn't get in an argument about school. Like, I'm doing a fine job. Why don't I get to go to Mexico? Like, I never got to go on any of those trips. Like, it's so funny. And it's like, I guess that's like, okay, obviously Matt has some work to do, but like his own personal, but like when we talk about trade imbalances, like I get like something like 10 again. I'm like, how come I'm not going to Mexico?
Yeah.
Right. So you have these trade imbalances, like that doesn't seem fair. Like, where's the fairness that I, as a civilian, just staring at this from the outside, could understand? I'm like, okay, I know it doesn't seem fair, but like it's complex. Like the argument's like, this is why your brother's going to Mexico. Like it's complex.
And okay, I can speak to that in a way that's probably, honestly, probably more from a, I mean, I work in this industry, but I'm not the expert on this part of the industry.
I wanted to go see Grandpa. I wanted to go see him. Like, why didn't I get to go?
I think that as far as like American values, free trade is a big part of that's important to us, right? We're not protectionist in that same sense that like Europe and Canada are, because it's, in a way, I'm going to put this, it's anti-American to be that way. We're open to free trade. We want free trade. Also, our citizens want European cheeses. So who is the government to say you don't get those cheeses? You know, like I think that there's, and that is a bit of a, I will say that isn't a bit, that is a layman's like understanding as far as like why those negotiations haven't happened. There's a whole history to it too. Plus our dairy farms are growing, and they have been growing, and we're producing more milk than we've ever produced before. For us to be protectionists and then to have counter like the slapped on the other way decided, because we're unwilling to, if we say, well, we're not going to sell, we're going to tariff everything going into Canada, or going the other way.
Yeah,
Canada's cutting us off completely.
But this is the thing. We're already in a bad situation.
Yeah.
So and again, I am not just like, let me be really clear. Full respect. I don't know how this works, but as a layperson, it's like, okay, what this sounds like is you get a full plate of food and I get a little like coaster of food. And if I say, hey man, I'm not standing for this. And they're like, fine, we're taking all your food away. And I'm staring at you with this full plate of food. I'm like, okay, so if I complain about the fact that you got a ribeye and potatoes and everything, and I got like a little broccoli, if I complain about this, I don't even get the broccoli. It's like, okay, well, I guess I'll eat the broccoli. Well, like that's what it seems like you're kind of saying.
Yeah, let's talk about it. I'll look at more of a macro level. So not only is Europe they could be a potential like consumer of our product.
Forget Europe. Let's talk Canada and China.
Or we can talk Canada too. And China is even a whole different story than actually Europe.
Let's focus on Canada.
But we're competing with like Europe and New Zealand, who's another major producer, in other markets. So not only are they a potential consumer, they're also a competitor of the United States in markets. So China is a good example of that. So China has historically imported a ton of dairy powders, like non-fat dry milk or skim milk powder is what you generally hear it called. Who produces a ton of that and is much closer to China than we are is Oceania or New Zealand. New Zealand produces tons and tons and tons of milk powder for export. So Europe also produces a piece of that too. And so we compete with these countries, not just as consumers, we compete with them as competitors for other countries' markets.
And what's their relationship? What's their relationship as far as tariffs? Like, are they getting hosed?
Yeah. So this is the problem: is our government has been unwilling to come to the table for a lot of years to make free trade agreements. That's not the case with New Zealand and the European Union. They have a lot more free trade agreements in other countries or with other countries. We don't have that. We have very few like.
Come back to the microphone. You're like,
sorry.
You're trying as hard as you can to get away from the microphone.
This thing is scaring me, I guess.
Yeah, no, you're good. You're good. I just want to hear what you're saying. So then if I'm to understand, New Zealand is like, hey man, can we sit down and talk about this? So we work something out that works for both of us. And China's like, okay, New Zealand, like, all right, let's sit down. And you're like, great, man. And by the way, like, we're cool. I'm no problem. Yeah. Like, I'm not like, I got a bunch of lamb and some dairy. Like, let's just work this out. They're like, okay, that's cool. But with the United States, it's like, well, you didn't invite me. It's like, well, you didn't invite me. Like, I'm not coming to the table. And then it's like, yeah. And remember that thing with Brian? Remember that thing you did? And they're like, forget Brian. He was an idiot. It's like, I can't believe it. And so it's like, it's literally like this sibling rivalry where you have this long history of pains and wrongs on both. Well, I don't know about both sides, but you have a long tenuous relationship that spans like all of these different things, which makes it extremely difficult to get both parties sitting at the table in good faith.
Yeah. And that's the thing with China, right?
Wow.
There's a lot going on with China. There's much deeper than their dairy industry or our dairy industry, the importing, right? The exporting of that. I mean, last week, Trump was at the table, though, with President of China, and they were having conversations, and there's been some concessions made, and it might look different. We don't know how that'll actually play out. I think the big thing for U.S. dairy, though, is we do not want to rely on China in any major way. We want to
develop value somewhere else.
Yeah. And that really has happened. Like to pull away from China, like we are really, really invested in this in Southeast Asia. So we're talking Malaysia, Indonesia, Vietnam, the Philippines are all markets we are very, very heavily invested in right now as places where we can have like real solid growth. Beyond like we want to talk about Europe and we want to talk about China, but there's other low-hanging fruit in the rest of the world that want U.S. dairy products.
Are you allowed to acknowledge Taiwan?
Are we allowed to? Taiwan's, yes, we can acknowledge Taiwan. Of course, of course. Taiwan actually does import a lot of U.S. dairy.
Way to go, Taiwan.
And really, as far as an Idaho plug, Idaho has had a long relationship with Taiwan, like Idaho State Department of Ag and stuff. And there's a really good relationship with Taiwan. Even as like close as Idaho is. So
I would love to talk to Director T-Walt about that.
It would be
shout out Director T-Walt. Please come on the show. She is the most elusive person in all of Idaho for me.
If you want to get maybe
I'm not even sure she exists.
Go a step down and you could go to Laura Johnson. She's the chief. She's the I forget her title. She's not chief of staff. She's the chief director for their international work.
Laura Johnson, shout out.
Let's go. Laura, yep.
Let's go.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get Laura Johnson.
She could speak a lot that Taiwanese relationship.
So Idaho uniquely has a relationship with Taiwan.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, I think I had Brittany Hurst Merchant from the Come on, Wheat Council.
Oh, okay.
On recently.
Mm-hmm.
She's fantastic. And they were just talking about their relationship because we apparently produce like really, really good soft white wheat or something instead of like the hard red, which is, I got to go out and like understand what these different plants are. She talks about it.
When you do your trip to Moscow, I guess it'd be too late. I said, Moscow, that's the Palouse region has got all your wheat.
Dude, that'd be great. I can't wait. So I went to, very fortunately got asked to come to Winchester for something. And I drove through right when all the canola was blooming. And I was like, this is the craziest thing ever. And again, it's one of those moments where you're like, you really know nothing, because I was driving up there and like, there's something that seems different about these fields. Like what's happening with these fields? And I realized like, there's no irrigation.
Yeah.
They're all like dry land farming. And I get up there and they're like, no, we just get water like when it comes from the sky. I was like, what?
It's a whole, Northern Idaho is a different geographic dynamic than Southern Idaho.
Isn't Winchester like mid Idaho? That's not northern, is it?
Yes.
Like central Idaho.
But the irrigation system is like most of Idaho irrigation. I mean, you know this. It's coming from the Snake River, right? And the Snake River is not flowing through.
It's certainly not.
North Central Idaho,
right? It is certainly not, man. And the aquifer is not up there either, so they can't pump.
Yeah, they're not pumping necessarily.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily need to, but they have also like developed their crops in a way that they,
They don't plant things that are going to need, pressurized irrigation. They're planting things that they know they have a high product. Yeah. It's a wild time. Yeah, so I got to like find out more about the wheat and everything. I really want to ride on a wheat barge. It's like,
that'd be cool.
Slick. Yeah. If you did, like the next episode I do with Brittany, I want to be on a wheat barge on the deck doing the interview.
Coming from Lewiston or out of Lewiston.
Dude, how lit would that be if we're going through the locks as we're like talking about transportation for wheat? Like this would be like, I've never been on a wheat barge. I think it would be awesome.
Well, it's funny because we're actually, as far as dairy is concerned, Dairy Gold, which major dairy production or dairy processor here in the Northwest, they opened a plant in Pasco, Washington. That's just, a big focus of that plant is for exports, like milk powder exports. Yeah. And it's funny because Pasco, like Lewiston, is that like has an inland port set up, right?
Yeah.
So it's a cool.
It's a thing. Mm-hmm. It's a thing. God bless it, man.
These inland ports that we have access to because of the the Snake River and Columbia River basins.
Yeah, we also, I think Lewiston is the most inland port in the United States.
Yeah. Yep.
Which is great.
Yeah, but it's ocean going because I think there's like the ports in the Midwest or like on the Great Lakes and stuff, but different.
Yeah, because they're
Yeah.
all siloed off, right? Yeah, they're just hanging out like,
We're
around
ocean,
themselves.
ocean going. Yep.
Ocean going. Like we're going out into the great, wide open. It's
Yeah.
fantastic. Listen, I know we're kind of crunched on time today. I would love to have you back because I want to talk about specific products that we're
right.
producing. I mean, obviously I went to Idaho Milk Products the other day. Incredible to see the operation. I went up to I don't know what it's called. It's like a dehydrator where they like
the dryer.
the dryer. There it is. Like they took us all the way to the top. So you had to walk up like 6 flights of stairs, and every single step you took, it went up like a degree in temperature. So you finally get to the top, it's 135 degrees. Just like, I was like, and you're of course wearing like lab coats and like booties and like the hat, like the hairnet thing and everything. And first off, just seeing the machinery in work, it was literally like being in a sci-fi movie because you have these enormous sounds and all these, I was like, it was wild. And you get up there and you see these 2 like super, the dryer being like 6 stories. Check this out. I was standing there. He's explaining. He's like, so we're making milk powder, like protein powder.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, great. And he's like, goes through all these different processes and finally comes to this one, right? And he just like points to the top. He's like, this is our dryer. And what we have to do is this is one of the last steps of getting all the moisture out of the protein powder. I'm like, okay, great. So you're essentially just running it through, like there's a flame in there somewhere or a heat exchange or whatever it is. He's like, yeah, so we actually have it in a vacuum. I was like, what do you mean? And he explained, he's like, well, 212, right, is boiling, but we cook the milk and the product if we heat it up too much. So we actually have this entire 6-story chamber that's exchanging heat in a negative pressure system. So the water boils off at like 165 degrees instead of 212. I was like, holy. So you look up at this chamber, you're like, that's all in a vacuum. He's like, yeah, it's all negative pressure. Like, this is insane. Like American industry is incredible. It's every time I see it, I'm just so impressed. And they're fractioning off of this product instead of just producing like, okay, here's a gallon of milk. They're like, that gallon of milk represents actually like all these different products. And every time we can spin off a different product and find a different market for that product, it goes up in value. So we're like a 5x, 10x multiplying the value of this raw virgin material into these other international markets. Like, God bless America, man. This is so cool.
Well, and that's really like, we'll go more into this next time, but it is when we look at exports, 80% of exports are dairy ingredients in some way. It's a dry powder of some variation. It's 80%. We talked about the cheese earlier, 20%. There's almost no other products being exported. We're not exporting fluid milk because that's expensive. Exporting a bunch of water, maybe a tiny bit of like, high temp sort of milk, shelf stable milk, very little. The majority of it is milk powders in some variation. Idaho Milk Powders are a really good example of that because they are producing very, very high spec, high quality milk, like protein and milk permeates and milk powders that are going into very, very like complicated like recipes for high nutrition, infant formulas, very, very nutritionally dense products. And when we're exporting dairy, that's what we're exporting. We're exporting milk powders that are going into other industries or going in for further processing.
You know what we're like? You know what Idaho Milk is like? We're like the German car engineers of the dairy world. Because again, I was speaking to one of the people at IMP, obviously, and they were explaining that they used to be in this kind of like bulk protein market. And then they decided they're like, we're going to go super high specialized and like change the protein profile. They go through all these processes. They dropped like all the removing of any more, like all of the different things. I'm like, oh my God, man. They're like, yeah. So now we have the best milk protein. Like if you just want bulk, if it's bulk season, fine. Like you can get, 70% protein or whatever from whoever.
Your S&P or your NMP. Yeah.
If you want the good stuff, you come to us. And I was like, hell yeah. Like sign me up. I wanted to like, do you have an application? I don't know how to fill one out, but like I wanted to work for them.
Well, and in all fairness, like IMP definitely has like, they are that specialized sort of product, but we also produce a lot of commodity stuff too. One of the byproducts. So we produce a ton of cheese in the country, in Idaho specifically. Glanbia is a huge cheese producer. Well, a byproduct of cheese is whey.
Right.
And whey powder is obviously, that is sold. We export a ton of whey powder, and whey powder then that's less specialized than what we're talking about here with like IMP and this like specialized milk powder or milk protein.
Listen, you got to come back and talk this.
Yeah,
I like
there's more
as
to
they
it.
were explaining it, because they were kind of explaining it as we're going through. So I'm absorbing first off, I'm absorbing the machinery. I'm absorbing all the sensory inputs of like going through this place. We had to have essentially like headphones on because it was so loud.
Did they do the tour guide thing?
Yeah,
with
the
little
tour guide thing.
Yeah.
I was like, this is wild, right? All of those different things. And again, one of those things is, and by the way, we have these different product lines. It's like, this is too much. And I can absorb a lot of material. Like that's a skill. I have very few skill sets, but learning is like one I do very well. That one was like, oh God, I can't take all this in. Plus I needed another coffee. It was like mid-afternoon and I missed I was on the way over there. I left here, it doesn't matter. The point is I really needed a coffee as I was walking through. I'm like, obviously you have enough creamer. Did you just have a coffee? Anyway. Yeah, right.
Open up the bulk tank.
It just splats everywhere. Oh God. Listen, thank you for coming in today.
Yeah.
I have really, really enjoyed this. I loved the Dairy West convention. I learned a dump truck. And I really want to keep diving into this because again, understanding this is starting to answer some of the questions I've had about like everybody got really mad when this administration came in and started talking about messing with trade. And in fact did throughout like these blanket tariffs. And it was almost impossible to understand. It's very easy to criticize that. And I'm not saying we should or shouldn't. What I'm saying is couldn't find the information even on a single product line to understand like, wait, is this a good or a bad thing? Because if you come to it instead of having a decision, this is blanket good or this is blanket bad, and you're like, help me understand in my own way, you got to go like product by product. And it's like, okay, I kind of got a sense of like, maybe it was good-ish for the lamb industry of Idaho, but like even that's difficult to understand because let's say we import less, New Zealand or Australian lamb. Okay, that's great because now that's more expensive so that Idaho producers get a leg up. But as the cost of lamb goes up like by $1.50 per plate, maybe people eat less lamb. So like, is it good for the Idaho producer? It's like, but at least I was able to kind of parse out the complexities. This is part of it. Like, I love learning this because like, okay, help me understand so I can make my own decision about what this means for the U.S. So,
yeah. And really like to finish that off, like what we looked at these sort of negotiations as when somebody was doing something. And we were going to take advantage of something or be part of something, right? Before we weren't having any trade talks at the table. There was no trade talks happening with the last administration. At least this administration is doing something. Was it perfect? Is it how we would have gone about it? No, but it is something that's happening. And we're going to work within these parameters to get some concessions and to get some trade deals. I mean, we have just announced like work in Malaysia and Southeast Asia now and Cambodia and Vietnam, right? Like we have some place to go that they have said, hey, no tariffs. There's a step down situation happening. So there's work happening. Even the conversations in Europe we started this conversation with, like, are we happy with the results? No, but it's a something, right? It's something that we didn't have before. So was the tariff situation in a good thing? I think that the fear that most of the industry had, including us, was the retaliatory tariffs that could happen. The reality is most countries didn't retaliate. They sort of stepped back, and I think they're waiting to see what happens. China retaliated, Canada retaliated. So if I'm going to speak for the whole industry, I mean, it's been a waiting game, but these tariffs haven't materialized to be the problem that we feared they were going to be because we were afraid of retaliatory tariffs. And they haven't materialized. Everybody in the world, I think, is waiting. Other administrations are waiting to see how the U.S. reacts, how this negotiation with China happens, how the negotiations, with Canada is going to happen. So we'll see.
Awesome. Listen to me. I appreciate you. We're going to do it again. Thank you for coming out, and I look forward to it.
Sounds great. Thank you.